and welcome to the weekend worship service of the First Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City. I'm so grateful to each of you for making time to be part of this service today, and I hope that our weekly service finds you well and in good health. If you're joining us for the first time today, or if you're new to our community, we're especially glad that you're here. I invite you to visit our website, slcuu.org, or our social media channels to get to know our congregation better and learn how you can get involved. Just a couple of announcements this weekend as we begin our service, and I want to remind you that the place to get all the information about what's going on at our church is the weekly Torch email. It comes out on Friday, and it gives you everything you need to know, including links to our weekly services and our Zoom coffee hour on Sunday mornings. Here's a couple of other things that are coming up soon. First, we have a devotional reading group that starts next week on Wednesday, reading the book Wild Hope by Gail Boss. This is a Lenten devotional that focuses on wild animals that are in danger of extinction and how we can find hope for the planet by observing them. This group is happening on Facebook. You'll read the book on your own time and then join us in the Facebook group to share your insights and reflections. If you'd like to be a part of the group, you can find that link in the Torch email. Second, our meditation group is hosting a virtual meditation retreat on Saturday, March 20th. This is a half-day retreat with alternating periods of sitting and walking meditation, focusing on cultivating self-compassion and mindfulness in daily life. There is a cost of $50 for each participant, and you can reach out to the church office to pay that participation fee, with proceeds benefiting the church. And now, let us begin our service with the lighting of the chalice, this week with these words by the Reverend Kimberly Tomchak Carlson. It is not by chance that you arrived here today. You have been looking for something larger than yourself. Inside of you, there is a yearning, a calling, a hope for more, a desire for a place of belonging and caring. Through your struggles, someone nurtured you into being, instilling a belief in a shared purpose, a common yet precious resource that belongs to all of us when we share. And so, you began seeking a beloved community, a people that does not put fences around love, a community that holds its arms open to the possibility of love, a heart home to nourish your soul and share your gifts. Welcome home.
Our church. Whenever I hear this phrase, I think of the song that Mr. David wrote for junior choir. We have a church with the doors and the windows and the steeple and a great big bell on top. The song continues and speaks to something we felt more dearly this year, separated from our doors and windows and great big bell. In the song, he says, but the most important thing of all is the people here inside. I have a book to share with you today called A Church for All. In the book, I think are images of who our little church on the hill wants to be. Radically inclusive, welcoming and affirming for people of all backgrounds and abilities. A community focused on love.
A Church for All by Gail Pittman. Pictures by Lori Fournier. Sunday Waking. Day is breaking. Let's go to our church for all. Church bells ringing, joyful noises. Choir singing, laughing voices. Candles glowing, banners flowing. Come enter our church for all. Weak and healthy, neat and messy. Poor and wealthy, plain and dressy. All embracing, spirit gracing. Each one at our church for all. Bodies wiggling, mommies reading. Children giggling, daddies pleading. Toddlers flailing, babies wailing. There's room at our church for all. Hands receiving, hands connecting. Hearts believing, hearts accepting. Feel the Spirit? Can you hear it? It's here at our church for all.
This is my Valentine for you, a prayer for the love in your life, for none of us can get very far without love. I invite you to join me in a spirit of prayer or meditation. Great love, from which all love is born, in which all love resides, bless all our people with more and more and more love. Bless all married people and those in long-term partnerships with patience, courage, and abundant laughter. Bless all sweethearts whose love is new, with openness, curiosity, and adventure. Bless all parents who adore their children, and bless all children for whom Valentine's Day brings fun, sugar, and lessons about true love. Bless all those who can't get married due to legal circumstances, the caprices of health insurance, or great distances that keep them apart. Bless all sweethearts whose love has changed, who are now ready to part ways. May their old love not dissolve into contempt, but sweeten into friendship. Bless those who are single and loving it, and bless those who are single and ready to find love once and for all. May each single person find what they are looking for. Bless all those who have been hurt or betrayed by love. May they learn to find shelter in healthy love, love that has boundaries, love that does no wrong. Bless those all around the world who are persecuted for the way that they love, until every person can love as their heart tells them love is not truly free. Bless all who love, all human beings who open up their tender hearts and take the risk of loving another person. Bless this holy work, and bless us in supporting each other as we learn to love. Amen. Sunday is Valentine's Day, a day when we celebrate love in all its wonderful forms. It began and is still observed by some Christian traditions as Saint Valentine's Day, honoring a 3rd century priest who, legend has it, conducted clandestine wedding ceremonies for Roman couples, allowing the men to escape conscription into military service. These weddings were conducted in defiance of the Emperor Claudius, who was having trouble finding enough men to fill out all his armies. And so, for his defiance, Saint Valentine was martyred. Valentine's civil disobedience has become the inspiration for millions of couples to exchange flowers, candies, stuffed animals, whatnot, to celebrate their individual love as couples. And what's been lost from the story is Valentine's resistance to war and violence, his desire that men should lay down their arms and stay home and create families and create peace. Okay, I'm being a bit of a Hallmark holiday cynic, I guess, so here's my disclaimer. If you and your sweetheart enjoy flowers and candy and pink things and sweet things, by all means, go wild, enjoy yourselves, and celebrate your love. You deserve it. It's hard to find good love in this world. It should be celebrated every chance that you get. But for today, I want to focus on Saint Valentine, the champion for peace. Valentine knew that love is what causes us to divest from the violent empires around us and instead invest in community, in family, in relationships. His name comes from the Latin word valens, which means strength, worthiness, power. There's a clue in his name that real strength comes not from power over, but from power with, from being in relationships where we devote ourselves to each other and allow ourselves to be changed by one another. Maybe that's why the Unitarian Universalist Association has, since 2004, celebrated this kind of love through its Side with Love campaign and the 30 Days of Love initiative, which runs from Martin Luther King Jr. Day through Valentine's Day. It is a month-long celebration of love through action, a search for justice that allows real love to flourish. The first Side with Love actions happened appropriately during the fight for marriage equality, marches and demonstrations, including mass marriage events where UU ministers married queer couples on courthouse lawns. Saint Valentine would have been proud. Then the Side with Love campaign expanded after a shooting at a UU church in Knoxville, Tennessee in 2008. The church had been targeted for its active stance in supporting LGBTQ+ couples and same-sex marriage in particular. The gunman was stopped by an elder of the church who tackled him, risking his own life to save many others. UUs around the country rallied even more fervently around the issue. A song was written called Standing on the Side of Love, and it was included in our supplemental hymnal. It's now called Answering the Call of Love, and we'll get to hear a little bit of it later on. The stakes for putting oneself on love's side have never been low, yet we as Unitarian Universalists take courage in our principles that help us rise over fear and lean more deeply into relationship with each other. The fight for marriage equality was an important and inspiring time in the history of UUism. Churches opened their arms wide to queer people and especially to queer families. We listened carefully to their experiences of navigating not only the legal system, but healthcare, schooling, immigration, buying homes and living in neighborhoods that didn't always want them. Straight folks were humbled by how easy their own lives were in comparison, and how unnecessarily hard and unfair it was for their queer neighbors. And we saw that many of those queer neighbors had left or were leaving religious traditions in which they had been mistreated. Some churches pretend that queer people do not exist, or that their goal is to be just like their straight neighbors. Some churches actively mistreat queer folks by shaming them or trying to change them or bullying them. Some tell them it's all in the name of love. You know, love the sinner, hate the sin, as the saying goes. But that's not love. Love isn't sin. Being queer isn't sin. And you can't love queer people and hate queerness. It just doesn't work that way. Many of us have had the experience of being treated by someone else in a way that we don't appreciate, and then being told, I'm just doing this because I love you. Perhaps in our more generous moments, we can recognize that the other person does mean well, but in the end, we just don't feel loved. And that's a pretty good way to think about love for others. If they don't feel loved, it's a good indication that we are not loving them. Real love starts with acceptance and grows with accountability. I love you just as you are, without trying to change you or make you more like me. And I hold myself accountable for the impact of my actions toward you. Real love demands that I do act on that feeling. Just feeling love is not enough. But my actions have consequences, and I must take responsibility for those consequences. And then, when we've learned to be accepting, when we've learned to be accountable, we encounter the hardest and most rewarding task of love, allowing ourselves to be changed by our love. Real love demands that we are not the same after encountering difference. We let love change us. We take a risk on becoming someone new, maybe someone we never expected to be. We acknowledge that we can't become our fullest selves without encountering someone who has a different experience of life. We lean into that change. We let our defenses down. We take risks and embrace mistakes. And we emerge better, stronger, more complete people. A church that is really living into the promise of Unitarian Universalism. This year, the 30 Days of Love campaign has invited Unitarian Universalists into a deep engagement with racism in our communities. That means not just in our cities and neighborhoods, but in our churches as well. We as Unitarian Universalists have begun to realize after many years of false starts and stops that we can't really start to fix what's wrong out there until we start to fix what's wrong in here, in ourselves, and in our congregations. If people of color aren't joining historically white churches in large numbers, maybe it's because they're not feeling the love. And if people of color in churches don't feel loved, then perhaps white people in those churches are not loving them. That's a hard thing to say, but we can't move forward until white people everywhere face that hard truth. Now, over the past few years, the UUA has undertaken the dismantling of systemic racism inside our denominational structures by convening a Commission on Institutional Change, which completed its work last year and produced a guide for congregations called Widening the Circle of Concern. This book is available as a free PDF download on the UUA website or for sale from the UUA bookstore. And this report includes specific recommendations for what our churches can do to realize that beloved community through our anti-racism efforts, recalling that feeling love is not enough, that we must take action to dismantle white supremacy. Every UU congregation is called upon to consider how we might be proactive as well as restorative in this work. The report also tells heartbreaking stories of religious professionals of color as well as lay persons of color as they moved in UU circles and experienced racism in our churches. For example, a UU church in a city with a predominantly non-white population doesn't invite any guest speakers of color to their pulpit and expresses nervousness about hanging a Black Lives Matter banner. Non-white visitors to congregations report that greeters compliment their English or ask to touch their hair. And new members of color report that it's assumed that they'll want to join the racial justice team instead of being asked which volunteer opportunity fits their interests and skills. A minister at a district board meeting makes a racist joke and no one corrects him. 56% of participants in a survey answered that yes, their congregation had recently experienced an incident of tension around race. I invite you to check in with yourself right now as you're hearing these stories. Perhaps you're saying to yourself, how could those things happen in UU churches where we're so welcoming and so devoted to racial justice? Perhaps you're saying, that would never happen in our church. Or perhaps you're saying, that sounds like something I've experienced in this church or in some other setting that I care about. These are things that happen in multiracial spaces. They happen not because of how we feel about people who have a different racial background than us. They happen because we haven't gotten real about it yet. They happen because white people often don't see ourselves as racist, and people of color don't feel safe telling white folks that they're being racist, because that doesn't always go so well. White people can be quite defensive about these things, especially when we believe it can't possibly be true. Think about those reactions. How could that happen? That would never happen here. That's the defensiveness that I'm talking about. Look, I do it too. And yet, I've heard from enough of my colleagues of color all around the country that it's happening to them, to their families, to their friends. And if I love them, then I have no choice but to accept it, to hold myself accountable for it, and to let myself be changed by what I'm hearing. How do we know if it's happening in our congregation? Well, I can tell you that it's an awkward conversation to just go up to somebody who's different from you and ask them if there's racism in our shared space. Let's not go there. Instead, let's just assume that there is racism here because racism is everywhere in our society. It's the water we swim in. There really aren't any spaces anywhere where racism doesn't exist. So let's start by assuming that it's here too, keeping in mind that racism exists even in places where everyone has the best of intentions. Racism's biggest accomplishment is just to keep things the way they are, to not ruffle feathers, to maintain the status quo, and it can accomplish this without any bad intentions at all. Next, we can read this report, or we can seek out similar stories using internet or other media and accept what we're learning and be curious about these stories. Not just, is this happening in our congregation, but what would I do if this happened to me? Where am I in this story? Am I the person with power and privilege, or a person needing to be heard? How would I feel? How would I respond? And most importantly, what would love look like in this situation? And would the other person feel that love? Then the next step is to take action to hold ourselves accountable. Unitarian Universalists do not organize ourselves around what we believe. As you know, we are organized around 7 principles which hold us accountable to our values. We act in ways that uphold the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and our first principle holds us accountable for that. We take action to uphold democracy and spiritual growth in our congregations because our 5th and 3rd principles hold us accountable. We are now being invited by Unitarian Universalists of color to hold ourselves accountable to our intention to be an anti-racist faith tradition by adopting an 8th principle. That principle's proposed language reads as follows: we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community, by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. I love each phrase of this 8th principle, but my favorite one is spiritual wholeness. It reminds me that I cannot be whole as an individual person until I can live in beloved community with my siblings of color, until I can really embrace the fact that I have implicit biases that get in my way, and until I can accept responsibility for how those biases affect people of color. I can't be spiritually whole until I let myself be changed by the diversity in our community. I can't be spiritually whole until I can dismantle the oppression of white supremacy in my own mind. And our congregation, our denomination, can't be spiritually whole until we collectively take responsibility for racism inside UUism. Now, our congregation has only just begun to consider adopting the 8th principle this year. We're just getting to know it, but we've been striving for racial justice for a long time now. Adopting this principle would hold each one of us accountable for making this love real. So I encourage each of you to spend time with the language of the principle. Pick out one phrase that feels extra juicy to you, that really speaks to your own desire for racial equity. By starting with acceptance and growing with accountability and letting ourselves be changed by love, we learn how to love better. That's what good religion is all about. Not only learning to love our neighbor, but learning to love them better. Or, as Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams put it, church is a place where you get to practice what it means to be human. On Valentine's Day, let's learn to side with love in a new way, one that will outlast the flowers and candy, that will transform our community, May it be so. Thank you so much for joining us this weekend for our worship service. My prayer for you this week is that you will be blessed by love, that you'll feel yourself expanded and enriched and challenged by love. There will be 2 8th Principle study sessions coming up, one on Tuesday evening, February 16th, and one on Sunday afternoon, March 7th, where you can bring your questions and learn from each other about the process for adopting the 8th principle. Please check your weekly email for the Zoom link for those gatherings. And now let's close our service by extinguishing the chalice with these words by the Reverend Carter Hayward. We are not automatic lovers of self, others, world, or God. Love does not just happen. We are not love machines, puppets on the string of a deity called love. Love is a choice, not simply or necessarily a rational choice, but rather a willingness to be present to others without pretense or guile. Love is a conversion to humanity, a willingness to participate with others in the healing of a broken world and broken lives. Love is the choice to experience life as a member of the human family, a partner in the dance of life.